Welcome to the session. Yeah, we're looking forward a lot to sharing some tips and insights about our experience as a marketing agency when it comes to growing your business online. There are some practical tips that I'm going to share, but also some other deep dives, and I hope it will definitely be useful for you guys. Um, Obviously, at the end of the session, we will provide you with a link to download the session slides as well. So feel free to do that after the session as well. So yeah, connect. It's also what Venture Cafe already introduced, how they already introduced the session of today. Yeah, let's be honest. In the past years, we've seen a lot of changes, a lot of shifts in being able to get a good connection with people on all fronts, whether it's work related or even in a private situation, whether it's a hiring process which is taking place digitally today. Anything becomes more and more online, and I think after the pandemic, we'll definitely see that a lot of things are still going to take place online, whether it's going to work or then at least staying at home, but many other things as well. So it's increasingly important, that we become better at building and maintaining relationships through the internet and through the online spheres. So yeah, that's really why we picked this topic. I think it's very important for everyone, whether it's work related or not, to be able to take some inspiration from these kinds of subjects and be able to build maintain relationships in a better way. The goal of today's session is really to provide you with let's say a tool set to be able afterwards to connect with your audience online and be able to understand better what they are looking for, and how you can talk to them, whether it's not face to face or whether it is, especially because online is quite difficult. So yeah, let's dive into it. So first of all, who I am. I'm not going to talk about myself for too long. But my name is Dennis. I'm 26 years old. I live in a little village in the Netherlands called Schravendeel. I'm inbound marketer and SEO specialist at Conversion Crew. As Conversion Crew, we're a HubSpot Diamond partner, which means HubSpot is a CRM platform, and by providing a lot of companies with this platform, we notice a lot of things are taking place, and we learn a lot of lessons from being able to grow online. A lot of things which are going well, of course, but also many things that could be improved a lot. Right now, let's dive into some practicalities. There are going to be 7 main pillars, I would say, or tips that I'll be talking about. And the first one is obviously very important, and it's about new relationships. Anytime you encounter someone new, whether it's on your website or whether it's in another way, a newsletter can be also the case, or whether you encounter someone in a physical office, a new relationship needs time, and it's definitely something which is worth investing a lot of time in. What we see a lot is that often the business owner of a company, he initiates all the processes and is often the number one contact person for being able to get new customers, grow, so also grow online. But this is something which we think doesn't help you grow on the long end. If you rely too much on your own network in the beginning of your organization, of your business, that's definitely something you want to try to say goodbye to as soon as possible. It's really about being unique to your audience, whether it's a customer or whether it's a partner. It can be anyone. It can even be someone who is being recruited to work for your company. So it's really about finding the right message, finding a unique message that's really unique. And it always starts with developing a strategy, and it takes a lot of time. It's really about developing that unique proposition, and that's not going to be something that comes overnight. So you have to grow into that. And that's really where the relationship part comes in. You really need to talk, understand your audience, see what they do, how they do it. Do they use their mobile phones a lot? Do they like personal one-to-one conversations? It can be anything. But without understanding them, you're not going to build these new relationships. So yeah, I already mentioned it. It's really about developing that unique proposition. And there are a couple of questions you can ask yourself to make sure you can, well, develop at least the beginning of that strategy. So first of all, and that's not just a basic generic question, but really ask yourself and try to answer that question really well. What makes you stand out from others, from competitors? It can be a competitor in the Google search, but it can also be a competitor who does exactly the same as what you do. What makes you stand out? Do you offer some value? Do you have a valuable interaction? Do you have good pricing? It can be anything, but really think critically about what makes you different than any other company that you see. And second, what will your audience miss if you weren't there? If you weren't there to connect with them or if they are your customer, what would they miss if you were not providing your service or a product or anything? So that could, for instance, be personal contact. You could maintain a conversation regularly. Perhaps a customer or someone else really enjoys the fact that you are able to talk and have a good chat every couple of weeks, months, perhaps. Is it knowledge that you provide? For instance, do you have a very good, interesting blog with a lot of articles, practical tips that really help someone, even though that's not even directly related to that thing you sell? It can be very practical, it can be very knowledgeable, of course, and that's really what could help you stand out, and your audience may miss that if you weren't there. And finally, do you ask for or offer something in your communications? And I think that's a very critical part. So do you already ask someone to buy something at your store, perhaps, to visit your website, or to provide their email address because you want them to be a subscriber to your email list? But if you don't offer something in return, never expect someone to provide that part too. Never expect someone to provide that email address because you're not providing value back. And I think that's also something very important in that process. And asking yourself these questions can help you move away a little bit from being dependent too much on your own network. And second, it's a very practical one. This one, it's really about online presence, and whether it's a local bakery or a very large organization, being present in Google in a My Business profile is critical. It's really an important part of connecting with your audience. So yeah, show yourself, first of all. Make sure that people can see you if they Google you. And that's just a little bit more than just providing a website with a company name with some basic introduction. It's really about showing what kind of value you can offer to people who are similar as them, especially when it's new people that you're building a relationship with. It's really important. So why not always gather reviews if you provide someone with a service? If you help them with even a small request, can be a very little thing, but just ask them, first of all, to learn what you did well and what you could improve in the next conversation. But also make sure that you get those reviews, because it helps you stand out from competitors, and it helps you stand out in the search results. And this is something that we've noticed that a lot of companies don't do yet. So someone joined the session just now. I'm not sure.
Yeah, just let her in, Dennis.
Yeah, perfect. So yeah, furthermore, even if you provide a small service, make sure to gather that review, because it does help you as well, looking well to others. Next, it's also very important for local presence. If you rely much on providing a local product, you provide a service in the region, it's definitely going to be a big advantage having some reviews, some customer reviews. Of course, apart from the learning area, the learning part, which you will do obviously if you have a good review, if someone leaves one. But it also helps you attract approximately 1.5 as many visitors to your website. So some studies have shown that if you gather some reviews, and especially if they're positive, of course, that's going to help you increase a lot of traffic to your website. But they don't always have to be positive, but it's really about making sure that the conversation online is stimulated. So even when someone leaves a little bit less positive review, let's say 3 out of 5 stars, it's really about the way you react to someone, that shows how you are present online. So even if you have a bad review, you can still turn it around and make sure at the end someone still has a good experience, and you look well online. Well, it's quite basic, it's quite simple, I know, but it's someone a lot of people tend to overlook. So definitely make sure to consider that. So in line with these reviews and ratings, asking customer feedback always helps your organization grow online. We see a lot of those emails that say, okay, how likely is it that you would recommend us to friends, to family, something like that, and it's called something which is called Net Promoter Score, or NPS. It's quite a marketing service related term, I know, but it does help you understand how you are helping your customer, what they are thinking of you, and what areas you could improve. One thing which is really interesting actually is that promoters who provide a good review or provide good feedback, they don't have to be customers. So people can also work with you, have a partnership with your organization, but they can still have a good experience with you. It's really about building an identity around your company, around your person, especially if you're a small company. Often the business owner is a large part of the identity of the organization itself. So you can ask anyone for some feedback, whether it's positive or negative, but promoters, they don't have to be customers. And that's really something that's worth considering if you want to learn and talk to people that can improve your business by providing feedback. So when we look at the online presence, the last section of this point, go out and claim your business profile if you haven't done so. And it's fairly easy. You just have to look for your business online in the Google search results, and then eventually they'll ask whether or not you are the business owner. They'll ask you to confirm, for instance, with your correct address. They'll send you out a letter, and then afterwards your contact details are verified. And that's when you can start that process. You can provide some appealing photos. So maybe some nice product photos, for instance, some product images, but also show who you are, show yourself, show the people that you're working with, show your team. That's really something that people like to see, especially in a time where a lot of conversations are not happening face to face. It's critical that you're able to have some appealing photos and connect on a more personal level, as difficult as that may be. But also in a practical sense, opening times, your website address. If people are able to find your address, we've seen in the past a lot of research that shows that if you have your address details on, a lot of people, they actually click on the route part in Google Maps and actually try to find the way to drive there. But it's also very important for local relevance. So they know you're situated in Rotterdam in this case, and that definitely helps you stand out from other companies. Because if someone is searching for you or some similar service in Rotterdam, it helps you stand out from other competitors outside of Rotterdam. So yeah, be accessible and definitely make sure you have that full product profile updated. The third part is really about scaling up. And this is, I think, a very interesting one, because this is where a lot of companies struggle. As soon as you've built a nice little company, which is very positively meant, of course, it's often very difficult to grow twice, 3 times your size. And that's really about the right tools that you're using, the way you're working inside your organizations. And one thing that we often see is that people tend to overlook or underestimate the tools that they actually require to help their customer or to help their audience. You can even start too big. So what we often see with HubSpot is that a lot of companies may be over energetic, maybe over enthusiastic to actually start off. They purchase a lot of tools. They try to start very big, but eventually they find out that they should have waited a couple of years. And that's really where it becomes critical. So don't start too big. Don't try to grow in every aspect of your business. First look at the core. What's the most important value that you create, and how can we make sure that more people are going to see that value? And one very big problem is that everyone uses one tool for everything they do. So whether it's an email tool, a social media planner, and then it becomes quite marketing related, of course. But that's really where a lot of tools are being misused, because every part of the business has its own tool set, and teams inside the business don't communicate with each other. And that's no way to be expanding and scaling up the business, because eventually frustrations will kick in, and it's definitely not going to help your organization scale up. So yeah, focus really on your audience. And it seems quite easy to do that at first. But you don't know a lot of people. So do you want to understand what they do, how they communicate? You really have to ask yourself a couple of questions. So for instance, do they communicate with a laptop? Do they communicate because they're on the road often and they need their phone a lot? Do they travel a lot? Those kinds of questions really help you understand what your audience is doing, and what kind of devices, for instance, what they use. That really helps you learn something more about your audience. But also, what do they expect? Do they need information from you? Do they need good pricing, or do they need transparent pricing? You often see that the one website doesn't show a lot of pricing tables on their website. So they first want to give someone the experience that their product or service is really well before actually showing these prices. But it doesn't always work for all audiences that way. So really understand and try to understand, are these people very direct? Do they need transparent pricing, good information before they actually contact you on your website? Those kinds of things. And that's really an important thing that we've seen as well. A lot of companies, they don't want to give away their pricing because they say, no, it might scare away some people. But in many cases, it actually helps, especially if you also provide value around it. So that could be a good blog with some tips, some practical information about it. But it could also be the lowest discounts, the best pricing in a summer sale, for instance. So when we look at existing relationships, and that's where we're approximately halfway the session slides, that's also something very important, because it's very easy to lose a connection, and it's very difficult, or it's a very time-consuming process to build a relationship with someone. But you could lose that trust in a second if you do something wrong, if you try to mislead them. So that's a really important part. You want to focus on all existing relationships, especially even if it's a one-time customer, even if it's someone who just came by just one or two times. They can still promote your business, but they can also be very negative about it in their surroundings, in their friends and family, and that could definitely not help your business at all if you neglect it. So it's not about pushing any messages, about trying to have them make a purchase or anything. It's really about trying to pull, and that sounds misleading, but it's not. It's really about creating some value for them. So don't ask, and then I come back to that first point, don't ask for value if you don't offer something back. That's not really about a two-way relationship. You really want to offer value, and if you do, you can at least ask for perhaps an email address to be able to email them. And then finally, it's really, when it comes to the existing relationships, you want a personalized, targeted message. So it's really about the times where face-to-face communications are more scarce than ever. You want to try to give them some very personal advice, some very personalized information. There are a lot of ways to do that, but it's definitely not easy always to build a personalized message around your product. And what I mean with that is what we often see, a lot of companies do that nowadays, because a lot of tool sets, they really focus on helping you get some personalized information inside your emails, for instance, whether it's MailChimp or any tool, basically. But just personalization tokens, although they really have a good effect, because we know 20-30% of emails using personalization tokens tend to be opened better, and it's about 25-30%, to be honest. So it does help, but using that first name is definitely not personalization. It's just a tool, and it's just a way, of course, to trigger someone. But personalized information is trying to see what someone wants, what kind of information they want. And you have to really segment your audience and look at the different kinds of people. For instance, those who enter your website on mobile, they need information quickly. They don't have a lot of time, so they need it quickly. Whereas on desktop, people have some more time. They usually sit on the couch, perhaps in an office. They have more time to understand and consume your content, the message you are displaying. So what you definitely want to prevent is an email that only shows a large sum of text at the beginning. That's not going to help you, and it definitely won't give your audience the feeling that some messages are targeted for them. And a very nice example that we often recommend to customers. Obviously, you cannot always do this because you need some tool set for this, but making content smart. And what we mean by that is looking at a way of segmenting your audience, whether it's device type, whether it's country where they come from, that would be the browser information. But also it can be anything basically which you have stored in your CRM, to make sure that content is shown in a different way. So for instance, if you've made a purchase and the next day you come back, you can display a message saying, okay, welcome back to our website, and you select a couple of products, or you select a couple of blogs perhaps, that are related very well to the blog or the product they consumed the day before. And that's really what smart content is about. So it really helps you personalize that message, and not just by using their first name, but really trying to find information that will actually connect with the information they already like. Even a web shop with thousands of products still contains, well, let's say at least 90% of products that people may not at all be interested in. So you want to find that way, you want to find that way to really show the right kind of information, the right kind of product. Another thing that I'd like to address is also the offline to online connection. And that's, I think, really where the pandemic has shown us a lot of insights, has given us a lot of ways to see that it's not just about, how can I say that best? It's not easy, or it doesn't come overnight, the trust you build with your audience. So what you can do, and that's it's actually quite simple, is to promote the interaction and stimulate the conversation that you have with your customer or anyone else, by connecting the offline and the online part. So it can be a newsletter, an online newsletter, which promotes the fact that if you come by the store, you get a discount on the purchase of your next car, or you get a free washing service. Anything such as anything like that will help you stimulate the conversation, because you will be able to connect with that people face to face, talk about their interests, talk about their problems, their challenges that they have, to be able to actually find a solution for them. And even if you don't find a solution for them, you still have a conversation, and that those people will actually be able to either like your company, like your organization, and the content that you produce. So it's also about using the right medium. Really think, and that comes back to the last point again, really think about the type of content you want to show, and what kind of device, or a TV ad, or a newspaper ad, how you want to use those media, to make sure that you actually end up having the conversation with your customer. So for instance, a coupon in a store that will actually be eligible, will be available, for newsletter subscribers who subscribe to your newsletter in a given period of time. That will actually help you get to know these people and get in contact with them. But there's another rather straightforward example, which is the QR code. Any pricing information, any specific details about a product, about a service. You can imagine someone visiting a local store, and they really want to reconsider their purchase. They really want to consider, hey, do I need this? And I'd like to read more about it the day afterwards. It's quite simple. You can just use a QR code to have that people access the product information, some details about a service or a product, which they can consume later on. They've seen you on your website, you've talked to them in person, and that's already 2 touch points that you've contacted with. So it's quite simple, but definitely something. I mean, it's always free to create some QR codes, and you can always use it, even on your website, despite the fact that some people are already on your website. Point 6, and that's, I think, a very important one. It's really about creating value. I've mentioned it a couple of times. We're not, in 2021, we're not looking at just selling products. It's really about selling your business, your identity. Someone really needs to trust you before they like you, or you have to be the cheapest one around. That's always a good solution. But obviously, if you want to grow, that's not just, you cannot just erase your margins and sell anything without a profit. So you need to offer value. And if people get some value in return for money they're spending or time they're investing, it's always going to be worth it. It's really about moving from a product-based to a value-based model. And it starts by just asking nothing in return for some value you create. If you give a presentation, if you have a good blog, it can be anything, just show it to them. And if they like it, they'll come back. They'll need your content and they want to consume it the day after as well. You can compare it eventually with building a friendship with someone. You cannot just ask anything from a friend without being able to offer something in return. That's not how this relationship works, and that's exactly the thing with a company and a business, a company and a customer. So, for instance, if we look at the Coolblue model, we often see it just all works. They have a really good service. They can even enter other markets, other sectors, even though they were not that experienced. So whether it's the washing machines or new electronics on their website, people understand the value that they create because their slogan is about making people happy and doing everything for that smile. But they not just say that, they actually do it. And that's really where the value-based part is critical. So look at these questions that you asked about your business in, I think, slide in section 2, and look at whether or not you actually do that. So if something makes you stand out from your competitor, actually look at whether or not you do that in your communications, in your behavior, whether it's online or whether it's a face-to-face interaction. So when we talk about value, it's really about building the trust. And as I already said, you have to earn it. It just doesn't come in a second. In fact, it can take months to build a good relationship with a customer online on your website, but you can lose it in a second. If you try to mislead them, if they see a discount for a product they purchased on the same day without a discount, they feel misled. And that's eventually going to cost you more than that extra margin that you had on a product. So it's really about understanding that it's not just one way. And I think I've mentioned it a couple of times, so I won't go into that again. But what can you do about it? So you can have a look at rewarding loyalty. A lot of web shops, for instance, they offer some exclusive content. They offer discounts, especially to those people who remain loyal. So for instance, those who follow them on their newsletter, those people at the end of the year, they get a discount for some new products. And I'm not talking about just a couple of percentages, but really about a good percentage that shows how loyal they have been and they're being rewarded for it. But it can also be exclusive content. Perhaps a small magazine that you're working on, some special tips and tricks that you're working on. It can be anything, but that's all about creating that value. And some people, yes, they are interested in that discount or perhaps a blog, a news article. That can be anything. So as long as you understand what they're looking for and how they interact with you, that's always going to work on the long term for you. Especially when, let's say, a couple of months later, that's the moment when you've really helped them, when you've really provided that value. And that's a good moment to ask for a review. Okay, what can we do better? What rating do you give us? Is there anything we can do to improve the way we interact and the way we connect? So when we look at value, it's really about looking at what you do best. when talking to customers, when working on your product, and do it even better. So look at a way to actually improve that value that you're offering to those people. And it's definitely not going to be simple because you need to invest a lot of time to make sure that you can even offer a better service and more personalized contact with those people. And the final point that I'm addressing here is the regularity of the content, of the connection and the contact you have. So if you want to build a relationship, it's not just about sending out a newsletter and expecting people will start buying from you. That's not how it works, as I already explained. But it's really about having regular contact and making sure you're present online every week, maybe even more if you have the time and the resources to do that, and grow consistently. So every time you post something, you post a new blog or you post a practical tip, it can be a couple of minutes of work, but as long as it's regular, it helps people, but it also helps the algorithms in social media to understand that the content you're producing is actually valuable, especially when people start liking and start clicking to your website. So the consistency part is really is really the basis for a successful strategy there. And it can be, it's very simple. So as I said, a regular newsletter, perhaps every week, with some recipes, with some tips and tricks, depending obviously on how many times people want to be contacted. But why not ask them? So perhaps you could ask people, okay, do you want to be contacted every week? Do you want to have a newsletter every month? So we can bundle the information from the weeks before. It can be anything, as long as you target that way of working around what they are doing and what they actually prefer. So as I said, the consistency part is key. And the goal eventually of posting regularly and connecting regularly is really to be top of mind in a customer's head, or in your audience head, perhaps even in someone you're interested in recruiting for a large company at the moment they need it. And that's really where the consistency part helps you as an organization to become more popular, more interested in, because obviously when they need something, that's when they start thinking about, okay, what solution am I going to look for? And that's really about making sure that you've always been present, having contacted and having displayed a lot of messaging very consistently. And that's when they will remember you. And that's, I think, a very valuable part that we've seen in our organization as well. If organizations do that, it will definitely help them grow their business online. So yeah, that already leaves me, I think we have a couple of minutes left, but it leaves me to the end of the session. As I already mentioned, the slides will be made available. They are already made available on our website. If you press the link, you can actually download the slides. We don't require any email address. You can just download them. But obviously, feel free to connect with me personally or follow us or send me an email if you do have some questions which you may not want to address right now. And other than that, if you have a question right now, we can still dive into it.